So we're going to be looking at getting cinematic looks in Photoshop using optics. And as Marco said, we actually have a lot of different filters included in optics. It's 160 different filters, including thousands of different presets. And I know that this can actually seem a little bit overwhelming to know where to start. So especially for new users, this can easily lead to options paralysis, or the agony of choice. You've got so many cool things to look at, you don't know where to start. So what generally happens is that people sort of find their favorite few filters and stick with them. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you just miss out on some of the other options and the sort of fun experimentation that makes optics so satisfying to work with. So what I'm going to be doing is trying to stop you from getting overwhelmed. I'm going to be showing my basic recipe for how I approach my shots, and showing how different sets of filters all fit into to a basic structure. And I like to think of this as a bread recipe. So like baking bread, you've got all of these different types of recipes and all these different types of breads, but they basically all boil down to 4 basic ingredients. You got flour, water, yeast, and salt. And this is how I like to approach optics. So I call this my basic optics bread recipe. So we've got the flour. So the first thing we're always going to do, and the most important thing to do, is to get our color balance right. If we're not starting out today a nice sort of even keel, even territory, then it doesn't matter what we do at the rest of the chain, it's never going to look as good as it could do. So once we've done that, we're going to look at secondaries. So we're going to make things and mask out areas of correction, for example, to improve skin tones or increase background separation. So these are corrections that we're going to be doing on small bits of the image, or masked out bits of the image. I'll show you how to do that. The next bit is improving light and contrast. This is what I like to think of as my yeast, because this is the stuff that makes the bread nice and fluffy and sort of gets everything to rise. So by sort of looking at lighting and seeing what we can do to tweak the original lighting and contrast that was in our image, we can get a much sort of bigger result than we started out with. And then the final bit is that sort of the little loving touch, that last little final look, the stylistic color correction. And this is my salt. So like adding salt, you don't want to add too much, because if you do, everything ends up just feeling a little bit sort of cloying and salty, and you don't want that. So we're gonna talk about how to limit, or to be judicious in our use of salt. And I promise you, this is the last time I will be so explicit about bread, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll carry on this metaphor for the full hour, or maybe the full 18 hours. So I'm in Photoshop now, and we're going to start off with our first clip. So let's just zoom that up a wee bit. So the first thing I'm going to do before I even apply optics is to turn my layer into a smart object. And I can either do this by right-clicking on the layer over here, or just come up to my filter and go convert for smart filters. And the reason I'm going to do this is that I want to work as in a non-destructive way as possible. So when we're working with optics is going to take us out into a different interface. And I want to be able to sort of come in and be able to tweak settings and tweak results right up until the very end. So by turning this into a smart filter before we apply our optics effect, means that we are never locked into a look. So let's come in here. Let's just reset that. There we go. So this is our optics interface. Now, if you haven't used optics before, I'll give you a very, very quick run through. On the left-hand side, we have our effect list. So this is where we're going to start to build up our layers. And these work very much in the same sort of way as Photoshop. Then in the middle, we have our viewer. So this is where we're going to be doing a lot of our work. And we've got some buttons up at the top here, which we're going to go through as we need to. Down at the bottom, I have all of my effects. There we go, 160 of them. Should we count together? 1, 2, no. And if I come into any of these effects, well, let's just go to haze maybe. As soon as I click on an effect, you can see it's applied in the viewer, and over on the right hand side we have our presets. We also have a histogram down at the bottom here, so we can sort of take a look at the distribution of our colors and our luminance. Cool. So let's get rid of that one there. I don't really want to do that. Let's just reset all of this. Goodbye. And let's look at what I actually want to do with this image. So the sort of style that I'm going to go for with this is your kind of fast fashion, H&M sort of style on this, like your kids' clothes, and everything's nice and sunny, and it's we're going to sort of play up on that a little bit. So let's think back to our basic recipe. And the first one is always color balance. So I'm actually already in the color category, and as you can see, we've got quite a few effects to work with on color. One of them is color correct, and we've got a lot of different presets over here, which are based off of nice little looks we have from particular films. Or we can just use our color wheels just to kind of boost stuff up here, and then bring it all down. And I kind of quite like working with the color wheels. I think that's a nice and it feels very natural way of working. But if you don't want to use color correct, we've actually got one that's called develop. And develop is sort of strips down a lot of the stuff, and it's more sort of how you would develop just a sort of simple raw image. So we've got things like exposure, so I can bump my exposure up a little bit. I like that light that we're getting, but I can also recover some of those details, those hair details as well, just by bringing back recovery. So I kind of like that. Brightness, I don't really need to touch anything else, I don't think. Like saturation is good where it is. If I was going to have this as the final bit, maybe I would boost the vibrance up a little bit. But this isn't about getting a final look. This is just about laying the groundwork. So we still want to keep this relatively sort of straight and normal. Sort of like no sort of not putting too much of a stylistic edge on things yet. We're just going to go straight down the road. And we can see if I have a little look up at the top of the viewer, I've got ways of comparing these as well. So I can compare my after and my before. It's looking all right. Or I can just do a straight wipe and wipe this left and right. That's not doing, it's not doing a lot, but it's doing just enough that we need it to. So that's the first bit, color balance. Let's add another effect. This is where we're going to look at our secondaries here. We're going to start to try to isolate out some effects. So I want to come in and maybe do something with the skin tones. So I'm going to come over to my grads and tints, and we've got, again, a lot of different filters to look for. I kind of like the photographic one. This is like having like a regular traditional glass in front, like just to change up the balance here. It's kind of really like, I like the effect that I get on these ones here. But we've also got a skin tone. And these are, a lot of different, again, I'm always sort of starting with the presets. And these are just sort of a lot of different ways of treating up and sort of improving our skin tones, or at least making our skin tones look a little bit different. But if I do this here, I'm applying it to the entire image. And that's not exactly what I'm going for with this particular look. So I only want our skin tones to hit our model here, our boy. So I'm going to come up to the masks up the top left-hand corner. And I've got a variety of different masks that I can use. I can just do gradients or spots. I can draw paths and get this snapping as well. But I'm going to go for my easy mask. And the easy mask, whoops, there we go, sorry about that. The easy mask is a nice way of getting complex mask shapes really easily. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw around the area I want to keep in. So sort of around about here. Lovely. And then I'm going to right click and just draw red around about the areas where I want to take them out. Lovely, around about there. A little dot just about here. I can hold down the Control or Command key and make my brush bigger or smaller if I need to. So I can just sort of come in here, maybe get a little bit close to the edge. And once I'm done with this, I can just hit process and it will generate up a matte for me. If I hit M on there, you can see the sort of matte that it's created. So we're missing quite a bit of the clothes here. So what I can do is I can use my paint bucket just to actually fill in all of that area and say, just, you know what, do all of that and keep all of that in. And I can just come to my edges and sort of just maybe tweak that up a little bit as well. Maybe take out a little bit there. This is, you know, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm going to hit process again. I could just hit enter on the keyboard as well. And you can see now we've got a much better result, one that is definitely improved. So I think that's looking pretty good. I can hit M again, turn my mask off, come over here. Now we see that before and after, before and after. We're only getting in the boy here, and we're getting a much sort of more warm, sunnier sort of look to it. Cool. So that is the second bit, which is the secondaries. The third part of my recipe is always about improving light and contrast. In this particular shot, I think the contrast is fine. I think we're doing all right with the contrast. It's you know, even looking at the histogram over here, you know, even though we've got, you know, a little bit of the darker colors over here, and we've got this huge spike of whites, I think that's sort of working. So what I'm going to do instead is focus, you know, purely on the lights. So I'm going to come into my light category, and this is where we have a load of the fun stuff. This is probably my favorite of all of the categories. If I had to pick one, which luckily I don't, it would be the light category, because you've got things like lens flare, you've got light, which gives in sort of gobos. Lovely. We've also got things like overexpose, but I'm actually going to use soft light. And soft light is going to give me this kind of nice haze across the image. Now, obviously, I don't want haze across the entire image, because it sort of just ends up blowing everything out. So again, I'm going to come up to my masks, and I'm just going to use a spot. And directly on the viewer, I can set up my spot here, get a nice soft fall off going here. So we're just touching the clothes, because of course, if we're doing fashion, the clothes are the things that we really want to sort of stand out nicely. And then if I come back over here, I think that's kind of looking all right. Now, the nice thing about once we've got any of the masks going, we can change up our effects, and the masks are going to stay the same. So we can change up presets. We can even swap out effects, and the masks are going to stay say there. So this gives us a whole load of experimentation time. So if I pull this back, because all of these can be mixed together, so using just opacity or blend modes, again, you know, just like you'd see in Photoshop. So if you're familiar with how things are working in Photoshop, you're going to feel right at home within Optics, and we can sort of get a look that we really want. So something around about there. Cool. So that is step 1, color correction or color balance. Step 2, secondaries. Step 3, improving light and contrast. And now we've got the last little one, the salt, the seasoning. This is what's going to give us a nice little bit of flavor. So I'm going to come in here, and there's probably, I think, when giving this the seasoning, I will fall back. I'm very guilty of falling back to my 3 favorites on this one. The first one is going to be grads and tints, and it's one that you might not immediately think of, which is actually quad tone. So what this does is it remaps the black to white values. We have a look in the parameters here. It remaps our black and white values to different colors. So I can come in like sunset quad, very, very classic sort of fashiony look, mixed very, very hard. And this is what I mean when I say this is the salt. We don't want to over season. This, over seasoned. Take this down, maybe to like 13, and maybe even, you know, 20. You know, we don't want to have too much, and that just gives us that little touch that we need. So before and after. I can swap that out. Maybe the warm violet quad. There we go. You know, it's another sort of classic sort of look. Love that one. But I'd say probably 80% of the time, I'm going to go for one of these effects for this finish, and that's going to be. Let's just turn that back up to 100. 1 second. There we go. Yeah, that's going to be either film stocks or film effect. So film stocks is like a lot of cool color correction. You've got things like film response. You've got your color correction. You've got filters in here. It's a grab bag of a load of different effects. You've even got vignette and grain, which we're going to come back to. But the main thing that draws me to film stocks is the fact that we have so many presets. I'm just going to keep whizzing through. I'm whizzing through really, really quickly on these presets, and it still takes me ages to get down to the bottom. So I can come in, I can actually sort of filter these down a little bit and come down and say, okay, well, actually, maybe the Fuji look there is going to be nice. Oh, hang on a sec. Let's bring us back in. And let's go to film effects, film stocks. There we go. And maybe I want something like Ektachrome. Oh, look at that. Very, very vintage. But the thing about these is that they are mixed very, very heavily. So my top tip for dealing with this is literally just to come in and set my base opacity to 50%. And the reason I do this is that I can now go through these particular ones. Maybe I'll look at the motion picture films and go through these particular film stocks and look at these and go, okay, is that the direction that I want to go in? And if I find something that I really like, maybe, well, let's have a look. I like the Eastman stuff. Where's that? There we go. Actually, maybe that one's a little bit cool. So if I like the look of this, but it's not strong enough, if I'm at 50% here, I can always mix it stronger. And if I think it's too strong, I can always take it down and mix it a little bit weaker. So just get that balance. It's that adding just the right amount of salt, just the right amount of seasoning. Now, let's zoom into this a little bit. There we go. Let's have a look at the before and after. I will be keep asking your questions right now. We're gonna get to a natural break in a second. So get your questions in now. So zoom in a little bit. So if we have a little look at the grain here, one of the things that you've noticed is that I'm able to be working really, really fast with these effects, even though we've started to, layer up quite a lot of effects simultaneously. And the reason for that, even though this is quite a big image, we are actually working in an automatic sort of proxy mode. So Optics is taking down and sort of previewing these effects at 2K, and we can go down to 1K, or we can take it up to 4K, or we can process this out in full. Now, it's important to remember that whenever we take out this stuff back to Photoshop, or whenever we save it out the standalone version of Optics, it's always going to process this stuff out at full. So when we're dealing with sort of fine details like grain, or maybe rays, which we're going to look at in a little bit later, it's important to preview this at full size, because it's only when we're at full res that you're going to get the right idea of what this is going to look like. So if I turn up my grain amount, in fact, I'm going to turn this up quite a lot, because obviously when it goes through loads of processing, it's going to get a little bit tricky to see. There we go. So we can see that at this amount, it's looking quite quite harsh. I'm going to take a little snapshot of that, and I'm going to take it down now to 2K, and you can see we can compare what it's looking like over on the left hand side at full res compared to what it's looking like at the 2K proxy. So you can see we can't quite get the right feel for the grain if we're just working at 2K. So I happen to think that is way too harsh, way too heavy. Probably something around about there, maybe 1.5. A little bit of softness as well, maybe about 0.3. I can play around with this as much as I want to, but I think for you get the point. You get the point. So we take a little look now at the before and after. So this is where we started. This is where we're ending. And even at this point, I can come in and maybe sort of say, okay, I need this to be a little bit sunnier, and I'm happy with that there. So I hit process, and it will then take us out back into Photoshop. And bing, and because we've got a smart filter, I can turn that on and off. That's looking kind of nice. I like that. Are there any questions before we move on?
Hey Ben, yeah, nice job on that. I think it's really cool to see you cover your particular bread making process recipe for color corrections. It's a cool way to think about it. From my perspective too, I just wanted to share my own perspective about optics, because I've been really enjoying working in optics for last month or so a lot. My early career was spent as a motion graphics and visual effects artist, and I used Photoshop quite a lot to prepare boards for clients. So rather than, mocking something up in a Flame or in After Effects, it's much, much quicker to come up with like lots of quick looks, whether it's for motion graphics or just for, to sell sort of like storyboards when you're working with a client. And I'm finding optics is really excellent for that, because you can so quickly just create looks and everything. I wanted to point out a couple, not questions, but Marco and I have been sharing some links in the chat. But I would really encourage everyone to check out the optics page, where we have an image gallery with all 160 filters. We have a before and after. You could sort of get a sense of what each filter does, and the documentation that Marco actually wrote himself it's very, very detailed, which gives some great just sort of instructions how to use each filter as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
No,
the documentation is really really useful for figuring out, just what the filters, not only what the filters are doing, but how you can start to use them all together as well.
yeah, and I'll point out somebody had a question regarding whether or not you can go back into optics to tweak the settings. And since Ben has his setup as a smart filter, he can jump back in, and it'll automatically go right back to the original setup. And and Photoshop will also remember what you last did. So even if you come back a day later, it will remember your last setup. So you can just reset it at that point. You can also save a particular layer setup and filter application for use later. You can have your own favorites. But I was going to point out in Photoshop, since we're back in Photoshop here, that optics processes in floating point. So whether you have an 8, 16, or 32-bit image in Photoshop, you can open that into optics. And of course, because of that floating point processing, you can apply one color correction where you go really bright, and then another color correction where you go really dark, and the highlights will not get clipped. So you have a lot of flexibility in your processing there.
Yeah, that's
And the
actually
other
really
thing,
really useful for from a sort
yeah,
of creative point of view as well. Is that you're not limited by, if you make a sort of bold decision at the very start, that is not going to come and bite you on the behind, 20 minutes later.
and optics is also action compatible for Photoshop, so you can save an action, and all the steps that you've done in optics can then be batch processed within Photoshop. And you can also batch process in the standalone as well. So you have those features across. And of course, when you purchase optics, you get the Photoshop version and the standalone version, Photoshop / Lightroom. So it becomes
Yeah,
very flexible.
That's a great point for a lot of, like, editors who might be running, they might not have the Adobe suite on their system. They might be running Resolve, for example, or Flame on Mac, or Nuke for that matter. So not everyone has Creative Cloud, right? So it's really nice to have the standalone option.
absolutely. Yep, yep. And I think it's like the standalone option also allows you to do things like batch processing of setups as well. So if you're not using Photoshop Actions, you can actually create a sort of a batch process of a particular style or a particular look that you like, and then batch that across a whole host of images, which is perfect for sort of volume photographers. People are doing pack shots, lookbooks, that sort of stuff. I think that's very important as well. Um, I've just seen that the time is slipping away as well. So what I'm going to do is remind everyone to join the competitions. We're going to be giving away some prizes at the end of this presentation. So if you haven't joined the competition now, go to borisfxlive.com for full details there and see what you can win. And I think I'm gonna go through this particular shot quite quickly, and then show you some examples of other images that I've made, which are using the exact same ideas, my exact same recipe, just for doing very different styles as well. So here, I really like this shot. Um, the only problem I've got is that the background is very very messy. So what I want to do is try and sort of make my squirrel the hero here again, and I'm gonna go through that same process. I'm gonna go through the color process, like get this balanced. I mean, this is pretty balanced. All I want to do is maybe just use the curves just to boost the gamma up a little bit. Then I'm going to go in and do my secondaries, and the secondaries here is mainly about making this background a little bit less obvious. So I'm just going to add a blur, and I'll just actually leave that blur at the default for now. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did previously, and come in and use my easy mask to draw up a nice complex mask on the squirrel. Now, something that people often asked me about is, how this compares to Photoshop's own selection tools. And Photoshop, especially in the last release, it's got an auto select tool, which is fantastic. It's great. You can click one button and you can isolate out a person in the image, and it sort of works really, really nicely. The only time I actually really love it, I think it's a huge time saver. But the only time where I find that it's sort of lacking is because it is just this sort of one-click button. If you actually after a specific area, it's like often I'll want to create a selection based off of an item of clothing or like a t-shirt or something. I can't make those sort of finer distinctions at that point. So you sort of like, if you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you go back to doing things the old way. With Easy Mask, what I can do with this is just come in and then actually decide the bits that I'm most interested in. So it's like I want to keep in like these plants that are at the front. So I can absolutely do that rather than just hitting one button and then it looks at my squirrel and sort of tries to sort of pick the squirrel out. So that's one of the things that the Easy Mask gives us, a little bit more flexibility. And it's not just a case of drawing in red and green for the bits that we want to keep out and take up. There are more other tools up here for adding in details or painting the missing stuff, which we can look at. Not today, obviously. Time is ticking on, but you can sort of just like have a little look at that yourself. So I'm happy with how that's looking. Let's turn off my thing there. I might have made a little mistake. I might have done my mask on the opposite way around. I don't really want to blur out my squirrel, so I'm just going to invert my mask up at the top here. And there we go. We got the squirrel inverted, nice and sharp, and the background a bit sort of more blurry. So we've done the color balance. So they've got the flower, we got the water. We're going to have the yeast, the bit that's going to lift it up. I'm going to add a little bit of light onto this. I'm not going to do anything too crazy. Just going to add a bit of a halo over here, and I'll find a halo effect that I like. It's just a sort of like a nice soft diffuse filter over the top to sort of give us that nice morning light feel. And again, I don't want this to hit the squirrel. I'm only wanting this to hit the background. So instead of having to go in and do anything else with this mask, I can literally just click the mask, drag it up, and now it's not touching the squirrel at all. It's only touching the background. And I can come in, I can add in more light stuff. I spoke about rays earlier. So if I add the rays in here, bring some rays over the top. None of the presets are going to do it for me in this one. So I'm going to go straight into the parameters, just bring that threshold up. I only want to just sort of cut a little bit here. Do I need to do anything else here? Probably not, actually. I'm going to keep that nice and easy. And then the final thing, a little bit of salt, a little bit of seasoning, sprinkling a little bit of rosemary over my image. And I'm going to come back to Film Lab. We've had a look at film stocks, have a look at film effect. It's very sort of similar kind of way of thinking. We've got a lot of presets to go with. I've just seen one that's calling out to me, which is a Norwegian sunset. So this is kind of all right. Bit strong. Again, usually if I was previewing a lot of these, I would take that opacity down to 50% to begin with, and then just bring that through. But just a little bit here, like maybe 15%, just to sort of soften out the edges a little bit. Process that out, and that takes us back into Photoshop. Nice and easy. Look at that. Dead simple. Dead simple. And this recipe kind of goes on all the way through. I'm going to open up like the standalone version of Optics I've got in the background. because I want to show you just a couple of things that we've got that follow the exact same process. So let's turn off all of this stuff. Like, we're starting out with the original shot here. I'm trying to find the color balance, which is going to be there. I'm then coming in. Oh, actually, maybe, yeah, there we go. That's more sort of balanced is how I want it there. Then I'm coming in now and I'm starting to add in little gradients and contrast across particular areas of the image. So doing that thing of the secondaries, pulling out the bits that I want to keep in. Then adding some flare. Got my lens flare going in. Lens flare it's fantastic. One of my favorite effects. We've got a ton of presets based off of, real life lenses plus sort of more stylistic looks as well. And then the old favorites, like just adding in just a sprinkle of film stock, a sprinkle of glow, and a sprinkle of grain. All of these just adding up just to give me my image, sort of taking it from here, which is a nice image to start with, but then giving us a lot more of a sort of stylistic look at the end. If we let's actually take this one here, which is a very sort of different looking effect or different looking image, and it goes through that same process. Color balance, boom. Secondaries, boom. So it's just this one here is mainly just to darken down this side with a neutral density gradient. Coming in with the lights, light, light, light. And then adding in my little bit of seasoning, the final look, which the film stock's just there. And that's giving us our before and after here. Cool. Are there any other questions? I can actually go on for a lot longer, but we don't really have the time to keep going, I don't think.
I think one thing to point out that a lot of what Ben's showing here with the masking is really straightforward, simple to use. It doesn't require a huge learning curve. As you notice with Easy Mask, it's a stroke-based interface. There's on-screen controls. It takes what otherwise is or can be a complicated process in Photoshop with diddling with layer masks. Super easy here. You can layer up as many masks per layer as you like, and it makes it really easy to experiment, and of course very easy to reuse those masks and drag them between layers, as Ben has shown. So yeah, I mean, I think we've tried to encourage experimentation here, and it makes it much easier to do.
Yeah,
Ben, someone was just mentioning lens flares, and I just thought if we just have 20 seconds to throw in to open the lens flare editor, I think that's, beyond the 128, I think, lens flares we have as presets, you can really build and customize these lens flares to your own liking, and this is extremely powerful and unique, especially for the Photoshop market, for Photoshop users. I know a lot of people might download lens flare images, but to have the customization to make your own lens flares with the edit lens button there, it's super powerful.
Yeah, this is something that I used to do a lot, is actually go and film lots of lens flares to sort of drop in different places and glows and all that sort of stuff, but you'd end up having to sort of compromise stuff and transform array. It wouldn't ever look exactly 100% like you would expect it to. With the lens flare here, because of the natural, and let's turn the brightness up a wee bit on this. Again, just so we've got a bit of a bigger one. Maybe I'll show something that is a bit easier to see. There we go. Yeah, because we've got, images or flares that are modeled after real life lenses, or a bigger sort of stylistic idea, wherever we place our lens in the image is going to be a lot more sort of natural looking to where that flare would be in real life, and sort of give us those little accidents that actually make the flares interesting and come alive. And all of this stuff is completely editable. Like we come into the spots here, we've got those as sort of green spots, but I can come in and change up the color on those just by clicking and then dragging and finding a suitable color, which is probably blue is a lot more fitting with what we're doing here. So there's a huge amount of opportunity with things like lens flares.
Yeah, I would just point out too, for those who are just looking at this lens flare editor for the first time, that this is, this comes in the Sapphire collection, so you could apply these lens flares to almost in any video host, because Sapphire supports Avid, Adobe, and OFX, which brings us a whole many hosts to support there. And so, yeah, the lens flare is a very powerful. It's found in Sapphire collection under the lighting unit, which is also available as its own unit as well. So, lots of great options for lens flares.
Absolutely.
And to that point too, I would just mention that as a team, lens flares is something that Boris FX really worked to improve quite a lot in the last 2 years. We've seen a lot of great new features coming, and we continue to develop. So if you're a user and you have ideas, suggestions, feature requests, we have very active user forums on Boris FX website, and really encourage all you Boris FX users, say you're a Sapphire user, you want to get in touch with the team, please just post in the forums and submit your feature requests, because we love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to give away some prizes. I think people are after some prizes. But,
that's
but
what
yeah,
we're
I
here
mean,
for.
if you've got, yeah, exactly. So I am going to do this in a way. I have absolutely no idea who is going to win any prizes. All I'm going to do is read out what is put up on here. So I'm going to say, congratulations, Bernard Gruber. You have won a 1-year subscription to the Boris FX suite. That is everything that Boris FX makes. So that is going to be optics that you see here, Sapphire, Continuum, Silhouette, Mocha. And I've obviously definitely missed something at some point there. I forget what products we have now. We've got so many. And I also want to thank, I want to say congratulations to Jordan Tyler. You have won a FMC online class. This is a high value prize as well. So thank you very much to Future Media Concepts for sponsoring this prize, and congratulations again to Jordan Tyler for winning it. We will be in contact with everyone after IBC to get everyone's prizes out to them, and we'll be giving away a lot more stuff over the course of the of today and the course of the next 3 days as well. So keep entering at borisfxlive.com. You can enter once a day and be eligible for the prizes there. So I think I'm going to switch my camera back. So I'm going to see if I can figure out which of these buttons I need to press. I think that looks like that one. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. I also want to say thank you to our guest hosts. So Ross is going to be joining me in the next hour, I believe. And
I'll be here.
Thank you very much. Good. I'm going to need the help. And thank you very much, Marco, as well, for being in the chat and helping to answer a lot of the questions on the stream as well.
Thanks, Ben. Great presentation. Really enjoyed it.
I love optics. We've released a lot of products this year, and I have to say that optics is the one that I have the most fun with. It's it leads itself open to a lot of experimentation and a lot of just playing around. Don't tell me how many hours I've wasted, not wasted, but spent playing around with lots of optics effects. No, I absolutely love it.